Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all, whether you're watching this on YouTube or on Rumble. Salam to every one of you. And I'm sure that in the past few days, when I covered with guests and alone the recent presidential election and its repercussions on the rest of the world, we missed some of the developments happening in the Middle East, especially in Gaza and Lebanon, and we wanted to focus more on these particular issues for its importance and also for its importance to humanity, because what's happening in Gaza and in Lebanon are changing the criterias, are changing the people's tolerance for this type of violence. So what is happening nowadays in Lebanon, in Gaza, in the Middle East overall could shape the future of the wars and how wars are conducted. If Israel normalizes this type of warfare, this type of extermination warfare, and still call it a war against terrorism, then any other country could engage in such acts of hostilities against innocent civilians and unarmed civilians and hunt them with AI-powered drones, whereas calling it as an act of self-defense. Therefore, it's very important to put this conflict into proper context and shed light on the atrocities of the Israeli side and try to urge and motivate as much as people possible in order to take a stand against it, because this doesn't only this is not only about the Palestinian people, it's about the future of humanity. As I mentioned, this type of warfares, if they are normalized now by Israel, then the future will be very dystopian. So today's victims could be the Palestinians, tomorrow's victims could be you watching this on YouTube or on Rumble, thinking that you are immune or you will not be killed by AI-powered drones with minimum human oversight, whereas someone sitting behind his desk and deciding if you deserve to live or to die. And most of the cases that are being documented nowadays in the Gaza Strip, also in Lebanon, the casualty rate indicates and proves that the vast majority of the victims are actually civilians, mostly are women and children. Therefore, we have to put this type of atrocities to the public's attention, bring it to the public's attention, and try to motivate as many people possible to push against it in Gaza, for yourself and for the Palestinians and for the rest of the world. This is very important. Now, when after October 7, we have argued that Israel intends on committing a genocide in Gaza. We didn't analyze this. We basically quoted the officials of Israel. The officials of Israel said that they want to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians through voluntary migration. And then when the neighboring countries rejected this plan, they resorted into excessive killing of the Palestinians in order to commit one way or another genocide. And when we say genocide, it doesn't mean that they should exterminate every single one of them. Genocide means the perpetration of an excessive act of violence against an ethnic or religious group with the hope of destroying them in part or in whole. So when you see that out of 2.2 million Palestinians in Gaza Strip, around 2 million people have been displaced and they don't have homes any longer to come back, if their water supply lines are gone, if the electricity is gone, if the food supply lines are gone, and the medical and humanitarian aid is flowing into the Gaza Strip with minimum levels, and starvation is being used as a weapon against the Palestinians in order to subjugate them, these all factors indicate, and these all crimes indicate, that Israel has the intent to commit genocide, to destroy the Palestinian people in Gaza in part or in whole. Now, we have new reports coming from the UN. The UN Special Committee, they concluded that Israel's warfare methods in Gaza consistent with genocide, including use of starvation as weapon of war. I'm going to broadcast you some of the findings of this new UN Special Committee findings. This has been only published yesterday. So Israel's warfare in Gaza is consistent with the characteristics of genocide, with mass civilian casualties and life-threatening conditions intentionally imposed on Palestinians there, the UN Special Committee to investigate Israeli practices said in a new report released today. This was yesterday. Since the beginning of the war, Israeli officials have publicly supported policies that strip Palestinians of the very necessities required to sustain life, food, water, and fuel, the committee said. These statements, along with the systematic and unlawful interference of humanitarian aid, make clear Israel's intent to instrumentalize life-saving supplies for political and military gains. So the most, let's say, the basic means for survival, which are food, water, and fuel, there is a huge scarcity of these materials, and Israeli side is basically weaponizing this tool or this type of life-saving means, for example, water, food, and fuel for political and military gains. Through its siege over Gaza, obstruction of humanitarian aid alongside targeted attacks and killing of civilians and aid workers, despite repeated UN appeals, binding orders from the International Court of Justice and resolutions of the Security Council, Israel is intentionally causing deaths, starvation, and serious injury, using starvation as a method of war and inflicting collective punishment on the Palestinian population, the committee said. The report documents how Israel's extensive bombing campaign in Gaza has decimated essential services and unleashed an environmental catastrophe that will have lasting health impacts. By early 2024, over 25,000 tons of explosives, equivalent to 2 nuclear bombs, had been dropped on Gaza. This is only at early 2024, so we are almost at the end of 2024. So we could arguably say if in 1 year they used 2 nuclear bomb-sized explosives over Gaza, now it is 4 nuclear bomb size of explosives dropped on Gaza. And this has caused massive destruction and the collapse of water and sanitation systems, agricultural devastation, and toxic pollution. The report raises serious concerns about Israel's use of, this is it, AI-enhanced targeting systems in directing its military operations and the impact it has had on civilians, particularly evident in the overwhelming number of women and children among casualties. If you remember the other day when we watched this testimony of a British doctor when he came back from Gaza and he collapsed crying because of what he saw in the Gaza Strip, and how these AI-powered drones are basically deliberately and consistently and persistently targeting women and children. So what the Israeli army basically does, they drop a normal bomb through an F-16 or a fighter jet or a tank shelling, for example, in a densely populated area or in a tented area where the refugees are taking shelter, basically. And then when there is chaos and people are dispersed and running for their lives, the AI-powered drones come and they deliberately hunt the kids, the children. Those are eyewitnesses coming from Gaza. Those are doctors talking about this type of atrocities. That is why at the beginning of this live streaming, when I said that it is very important for us to shed light on this issue, because this doesn't only concern the Palestinians, it also concerns the humanity and the future of war conduct and how wars will be basically fought in the future. If they are normalized now, then they will be normalized in 2025 when there is another type of war in the world. If Israel can do it, other countries will do it as well. So be wary of it and be sure that today's victims, tomorrow could be you. Like today could be the Palestinians, tomorrow could be you. So don't underestimate this type of atrocities, guys. It's very, very important to push against it from now, right? That is why we do such coverage and such streams to educate the people of the grave, grave threats facing humanity. Amid the devastation in Gaza, Israel's escalating media censorship, suppression of dissent, and targeting of journalists are deliberate efforts to block global access to information, the committee found. It also noted how social media companies disproportionately removed pro-Palestinian content in comparison with posts inciting violence against the Palestinians. I mean, this is also persistent, by the way, on X, despite the fact that X has I would say the least suppression is on X. However, still, for example, there are certain words if you use collectively, for example, against the Muslims, that you hate the Muslim people, you wish death upon the Muslim people, for example, this or that, it won't be suppressed. It won't. The visibility will not be limited. But when there is similar, let's say, hate speech against the Jewish people, then the content is suppressed. And similarly, against Palestinians or against Israelis, it's the same. If you call Israel a terrorist state, for example, you will be suppressed. But if you call the Palestinians terrorists, it's similar. And same thing also goes to the coverage of the war itself. Like Israel has killed tens, right? We almost lost the count. Probably 150 already journalists killed in Gaza. We're not speaking of Lebanon yet, only in Gaza, right? I just want to say something to Abdelaziz. Is telling me, thank you. I hope that you translate this to Arabic. I just want to speak very briefly in Arabic, and I will say, أنا ما فيني ترجم البث المباشر للعربي. بث مباشر مدته ساعة ما أخرج الواحد يترجمه للعربي. بدك فريق عمل، بدك شركة. أنا بشتغل لحالي، أنا ما فيني ترجم بث مباشر مدته ساعة إلى اللغة العربية. Anyways. So we have two aspects of the suppression of information, one of which is by the algorithm and by the AI, let's say, observations of suppressions of some content on YouTube, on X, on Facebook. The worst are Instagram and Facebook. TikTok is now becoming also bad. X is the least worse, let's say, in this type of suppression, and also the killing of these journalists in order to hide the truth from the people. So the committee called on all member states to uphold their legal obligations to prevent and stop Israel's violation of international law and hold it accountable. It's like, yeah, inshallah, like the member states are not the member states who are the member states of the UN Security Council nowadays. It's very unfortunate to see that the consistent support of the allies of the US in the UN Security Council to Israel and shielding it from any type of condemnation. And Russia and China are not, in my opinion, doing enough. Let's be honest about it. China and Russia are not doing enough for the Palestinians, and this could be seen as a golden opportunity for China and for Russia in the Arabic world in order to market themselves and sell their vision of the world through this mayhem in the Middle East that is generated and caused by the US and Israel and their allies. So Russia and China, in my opinion, are still being too diplomatic with Israel and still playing with the rules-based international order, which the Americans have set for the rest of the world, but not for themselves and not for their little baby Israel. So in this case, the Chinese or the Russians, they can and they could organize a global conference, for example, inviting global powers, including the US, including European countries. If it happens in China, I think there wouldn't be a big problem. And if they don't attend, then you could point out to the hypocrisy of these countries, right? But you could bring major countries, influential countries, and exert pressure. You could isolate Israel on a trade level, business level, diplomatic level. There are so many leverage that these countries uphold and have over Israel, and they're not using it efficiently. I mean, China and Israel, they have great business partnership, but to be honest with you, sometimes there are limits that some countries shouldn't cross, one of which is genocide, right, and ethnic cleansing. And if they cross, there has to be a world police putting an end to it or putting some pressure, and not through intervention, military campaigns like the US, but there has to be collective action against this type of behavior. Otherwise, this type of behavior will be normalized, and in the future, there could be other wars that China and Russia would be basically victims of this type of war, right? This is just a thought. People think that I'm pro China or pro Russia. No, I'm not. I'm also criticizing them for not doing enough, but they're not the ones causing this, right? It's American weapons, it's American bombs, it's American diplomatic immunity shielding. And today, I still remember these standing ovations that the congressmen and congresswomen gave, basically, to the genocidal maniac Netanyahu in Congress. How many times? Over 100 times? I even lost count back then. So we have this new UN committee report. Additionally, we have a new report coming from Human Rights Watch. Human Rights Watch says that Israeli authorities have deliberately caused the mass displacement of Palestinians in Gaza and are responsible for war crimes and crimes against humanity in the enclave. They also say that Israel's conduct during the hostilities, during which 1.9 million of Gaza's 2.2 million people have been displaced, according to the UN, amounted to forced displacement, and that these acts had been widespread and systematic. And this report comes amid mounting international alarm over the catastrophic humanitarian conditions in Gaza, huge swaths of which have been reduced to uninhabitable rubble by the massive bombardment of the Israeli military. Statements by senior officials with command responsibility show, they mean in the Israeli forces, and these senior officials, they said they have statements showing that forced displacement is intentional and forms part of Israeli state policy and therefore amount to a crime against humanity. Israel's actions appear to also meet the definition of ethnic cleansing. I don't know, today somebody was trying to tell me, go and check the definition of genocide and ethnic cleansing before using them. This is coming from UN Commission and coming from Human Rights Watch. Both are saying this mass displacement is systematic, it's deliberate, it's state policy, and then the destruction of the state this infrastructure in the Gaza Strip in order to spread hopelessness and make the city basically uninhabitable by destroying their water supplies, the electricity generator, hospitals, schools, and everything. Those amount to act of genocide because the Israeli army is trying to destroy the Palestinian people in whole or in part. So if it's an unlivable, you already committed the genocide because you destroyed their present and their presence and their future. So this is very important to point out to this factor. It also said, this report by the Human Rights Watch, that the level of destruction caused by Israel's offensive, which has flattened homes, hospitals, bakeries, energy and water supplies, and agricultural land, and the raising of land in areas such as the Netzarim corridor, suggests that Israel didn't intend to allow civilians to return to some parts of Gaza. To support its argument, this report said that the forcible transfer was intentional and thus a war crime. The report cited quotes from the Israeli officials saying that Gaza's territory would be reduced and calling for the immigration of Gaza's residents and the reestablishment of the Israeli settlements in the territory. And this is something that when we basically point out to this type of behavior from the Israeli side and say that this is very criminal, what they're doing is genocidal, and they want to limit our speech. They introduce new laws, equate criticizing the Israeli genocidal policies with anti-Semitism. So basically, they are not only shielding Israel in the UN, they're not only shielding Israel in the international courts, they're not only shielding Israel by supplying them with weapon, ammunition, cash money, and all sorts of intelligence support, logistical support, this and that. No, they're also trying to suppress our right to reject this type of criminality, right? So nowadays in Germany, it has become very difficult to criticize Israel. And they could equate it with criticizing anti-Semitism. It depends on the report. It depends on the person who is interpreting how and what you're saying, basically, right? It's very, very difficult nowadays to express dissent against this type of criminality if you are in Germany and in other places. And this is not going to be exclusive, by the way, to Germany and in Europe. It's going to come also to the United States, even with Donald Trump in power. And I'm going to show you a video of him promising this type of laws soon in the United States. We have Francesca Albanese. I'm sure you already know her. She is the UN Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territories. And she was asked yesterday about this particular report by the UN. And this is what she has to say about it.
What do you make of the recent announcement by the IDF that they will not allow anyone to return to northern Gaza after everything else that we have witnessed?
My answer is, I told you on the 14th of October 2023, I issued a statement when Israel issued a mass evacuation order, which is a monstrosity in and of itself. It cannot be legal under any circumstances, because you need to ensure safety, shelter, food, access to medical assistance to people you evacuate. It is to be for a purpose, for military necessity, for a short period of time. What Israel has done has kicked out 1.1 million people out of their homes, including elderly, persons with disabilities, pregnant women, while they were being bombed. And they've been sent to places which were being bombed. This is all documented, not just by me, but forensic experts, the United Nations, Israeli lawyers themselves. And 22 hospitals have been part of this evacuation. Now, whomever didn't leave was considered a terrorist affiliate, as an associate. So, but I said, 1 or 2 days after, I said, this is going to be the largest mass evacuation of Palestinians since the Nakba. And so it was, because I'm a scholar. My scholarship has been on forced displacement of the Palestinians. So I know that Israel, under the fog of war, takes the opportunity to forcibly displace the Palestinians in order to take the land. And they've said it, and they've done it.
They've said it and they have done it. And they have done it previously. They have done it many, many times for decades. And it didn't even start in the Nakba. But if we want to remember what happened in the Nakba, one of the Palestinians who is still in the Gaza Strip, he was interviewed by the Human Rights Watch recently, and his statement was included in the report. And he says, the first thing I thought of was the Nakba of 1948. I thought the Israeli authorities were trying to do this again, to take over our land and our houses again. Once I heard the evacuation order to go south, my first reaction was, I'm not leaving. It is not an option to leave everything I have worked for. But then the bombs started and our houses were being destroyed. I needed to protect my family. This is why I finally left. His name is Dr. Hassan. He is a 49-year-old man who fled with his family from his home near Jabalia in northern Gaza to Khan Yunis in the south on November 13th, 2023. And he never came back, and he may not come back ever again. So this is the script of the 101 of ethnic cleansing of the Palestinians. First, before starting the acts of hostilities, you tell them they have to go to the south. We're opening some corridors for you to go for safety, this and that, although there is no certain locations in the south for these people to take shelter. So everybody has to evacuate themselves and try to find something, or in some neighbor or some, let's say, relative to stay, or in tents, right? But then those who didn't leave, they were bombed by the Israeli forces, so they were forced to leave. And those who stayed, despite the bombing, they were considered terrorist associates or affiliates. And this is when the AI-generated drones consider everyone and any Palestinian man in the fighting age between 15 to 60 years old, basically. Anyone who is walking in the street or anywhere in this northern Gaza, they hunted them like a rabbit, right? And we've seen endless footage like this, and I'm sure unfortunately I cannot show you on YouTube because this video would be completely shadow banned and demonetized, but you can watch this. You can just go to X and type drone and Gaza and check the footage by yourself. How many times people, even group of people, they were just walking and they were hunted all together by this AI powered drones. So and we have been very critical of the inaction of many of the countries, especially in Europe, for not having any, let's say, different foreign policy approach compared to the United States. And in a little too little too late statement by Joseph Borrell. I mean, he's now leaving probably because he's the high representative of the EU for foreign affairs, because he's going to leave his job. Now he made some statement, says the approach we have taken for over a year about the war in Gaza has failed. We need to change attitude. After a year of unheeded pleas about the situation in Gaza, we cannot continue with business as usual. I have proposed to EU member states to ban import of products from illegal settlements and to suspend the political dialogue with Israel. I would say this is too little, too late. And all this European and American officials, they either speak at the end of their careers, just few weeks before they leave their posts, or they start telling you the truth or have the truth when they completely retire. And this has become really tiring for me and for many people. It's like, oh, ex-CIA officer or ex-Pentagon official or ex-European Commission official or the ex-head of the EU representative for foreign affairs or blah, 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 ex-foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, this and that. Every time when they are an ex-former or at the end of their career, they start talking their conscience, right? Like and telling us the truth. And this is how can we even benefit from this type of statements now? You proposed. I mean, when Russia invaded Ukraine and launched their military offensive on Ukraine, they didn't wait 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, they already imposed sanctions against Russia, hundreds of sanctions, right? And now, after 1 year and 1 month of exterminating like 45,000 people and completely decimating an entire enclave, basically, where 2.2 million people used to live. Now you're proposing after 13 to 14 months, proposing, and at the end of your career, too little, too late. And guys, I will show you a video of an example of what is ethnic cleansing, basically, right? Like, what is forced displacement of people from their homes, from their villages, from their tents, from their places of living, basically, right? And this video is coming from I will show you this video. So this is a footage of Israeli forces demolishing a mosque in the Bedouin village of al-Hiran in the Negev, where residents have self-demolished their homes after threats from the authorities. Israel plans to build a Jewish town, Hiran, in its place. So this is how they do it, basically. I mean, under heavy Israeli military presence, with all these bulldozers, they come, they destroy your homes, they come, they destroy your mosques, they come, they destroy whatever you have in this place, and you cannot really resist it, right? And it's you're not armed, you cannot really do anything about it, but your entire life has been destroyed, and they just rebuild anything else. And then Netanyahu comes and says, when we came to Palestine or Israel a few decades ago, it was a desert, and we make it a bloom. I mean, you literally destroy people's homes, and you are reconstructing or rebuilding something else over it. This is ethnic cleansing. Another example of ethnic cleansing is what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh a few months ago, right? Karabakh, Artsakh, when where in 2023, Azerbaijan, backed by Turkey and Israel, they committed an ethnic cleansing of 120,000 Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and forcibly displaced them to Armenia. And they captured the territory. Now, this act was an ethnic cleansing, and they forcibly pushed people into another region. But it hasn't been spoken about it much in the press, and everybody was like, as if they were trying to cover up for Azerbaijan for its importance. And nowadays, this is something that is very important, like since we're speaking about ethnic cleansing. And I remember in 2020, when first Azerbaijan launched its military offensive against the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and captured some of the territories, some of these so-called rebels in Syria, who were part of the Free Syrian Army backed by Turkey, they traveled to Azerbaijan and they fought alongside the Azeri army against the Armenians. And not only military support, but many big accounts, platforms, media outlets who are anti-Assad, basically. They were celebrating Azerbaijani war against the Armenians and calling it something like it's a holy opening or an Islamic opening of the infidels' territories, right? Because they consider Erdogan their basically sultan and their emir, so they like the idea of ethnically cleansing the Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, and they celebrated it, right? And this type of useful idiots are always used by the empire and the allies of the empire, basically. And nowadays, when you ask them, and these same people who are now like, we're with Palestinians and Palestinians are getting murdered, we're for Gaza, we're for the Palestinians, like they pretend to be supporting the Palestinians now, right? And the basic question that I want to ask them, where does Israel import its energy needs? Like how do they operate their tanks and fighter jets? 40% of the gas and fuel that comes to Israel is imported from Azerbaijan. And through which country this gas pipeline is passes through and comes to Israel? Through Turkey. So the gas pipeline is extended from Azerbaijan to Turkey, and Turkey sends them to Ceyhan port to Israel. And despite this, now Erdogan has the audacity to come and say, we will cut all types of relationship with Israel. I mean, you have to cut its energy supplies, right? 40% of the energy supplies of Israel comes from Azerbaijan, which is a twin state for Turkey. And it passes through Turkey and it goes to Israel. So you have a leverage over Israel if you want to use it. And this is what President Assad told the Arabic and Islamic countries a few days ago. And he said, are we only going to condemn and issue statements of condemnation? I mean, last year we already did that. We have to do something practical. And the least we can do is boycott. And he meant it to Turkey, he meant it to Azerbaijan, he meant it to the UAE, he meant it to all these Arabic and Islamic countries who are still dealing with Israel and have diplomatic relations with Israel, have business relationship with Israel. It's practical, right? It's practical. You can do it, but they're not doing it. I'm going to show you this video just to explain to you how Azerbaijan and Turkey help Israel's deranged war against the Palestinians. So 40% of Israel's oil comes from Azerbaijan via Turkey that is used to fuel Israel's genocide in Gaza, along with Israel's bombing of West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, Iran, Iraq, and Yemen. In return, Israel provides 69% of Azerbaijan's weapons used to ethnically cleanse 100. So basically what is happening here, Azerbaijan is sending oil to Israel, 40% of its needs. And Israel is giving Azerbaijan 69% of its weapons to ethnically cleanse the Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh. It's a big business.
Look at this map. Azerbaijan's oil has fueled Israel's genocide.
I will just turn on the volume a little bit for you to listen well.
Look at this map. Azerbaijan's oil has fueled Israel's genocide in Gaza, while Israeli weapons were used by Azerbaijan to ethnically cleanse Armenians. This is a sinister relationship not enough people are talking about, one that can be simply understood as oil for weapons. As the world descends on Baku for COP29 to talk about climate change, 40% of Israel's oil comes from Azerbaijan, crucial for Israel's war on Palestine, Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, and Iraq. Without it, Israel would be crippled. In return, Israel sells Azerbaijan billions of dollars in weapons. This includes drones and missiles. 69% of Azerbaijan's weapons imports come from Israel. And without them, Azerbaijan couldn't have ethnically cleansed over 100,000 Armenians. One politician said the relationship between Israel and Azerbaijan is like an iceberg. Most of it remains unseen. It is time for that to change. If you like stories about politics, culture, and history, follow Uncivilized for more.
So, I think Turkey under Erdogan, they have very loud statements against Israel, but they don't do much. And in the Arabic world, unfortunately, also in the Islamic world, this type of populistic speeches are very welcomed and are seen as heroic, whereas he is enabling the extermination of the Palestinians. And at the same time, these same people who keep praising Erdogan, they see Iran and Syria as enemies. And they keep telling us that Israel and Syria, Israel and Iran are allies under the table. A ridiculous claim, which is not backed by any evidence, but it's just a widespread conspiracy, basically, among many people who think that what they say, according to them, the Persians and the Israelis are conspiring against the Arabs, right, to destroy them, basically. I mean, the Arabic countries, what have they done? Let's suppose that there is a conspiracy between Iran and Israel. Then where are the Arabic countries? How many pennies have come from Saudi Arabia to support the Palestinians? How many pennies have come from other Arabic countries? How many hospitals, how many schools, how many universities, how many water supplies, how many electricity generators? Where is the port? Where is the airport? Where is the leverage? Where is the pressure on Israel and the United States to give the Palestinians land and state, right? Arabs haven't done much for the Palestinians, but they keep criticizing Iran for not doing much or conspiring against Arabs. I think sometimes Arabs have to really clean their home first and see the chaos in their home before pointing finger on other countries. I mean, why this should be the responsibility of Iran to begin with? Who said that this is called the Iranian-Israeli conflict? It was always called the Arab-Israeli conflict. Iran only joined this conflict after 79, after the Islamic Revolution, and the Palestinian issue started before 48, before the Nakba, right? So what have the Arabs done during that years? Question mark, question mark, question mark. There was a voting, by the way, in the UN General Assembly, which had some surprising results. They have voted for or against permanent sovereignty of the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestinian territory, including East Jerusalem, and of the Arab population in the occupied Syrian Golan over their natural resources. So they have voted for or against the right of the Palestinians to have a sovereignty over the occupied Palestinian territories, including East Jerusalem, and also the sovereignty of the Golan Heights, the Syrian sovereignty over the Golan Heights and over their natural resources. So from the voting, as you can see, 159 countries voted in favor. 7 countries voted against. What are these countries? Argentina. Javier Milei, the guy who just came to Argentina he will change Argentina's face completely and revolutionize it. So he voted against it. Canada, Justin Trudeau. Israel, and then we have some islands which I don't know even to locate them on the map. Micronesia and Nauru and Palau voted against, and finally the United States. So basically, it's the US, Canada, and Argentina and Israel voted against. Those islands are not really, I don't even know them. And abstention, Cameroon. I don't know why Cameroon would abstain, to be honest. Cote d'Ivoire. I don't know why would they abstain. Fiji, Kiribati, we have Panama, we have Papua New Guinea, we have Paraguay, we have Rwanda, we have Togo, we have Tonga, we have Tuvalu. Those are the countries which abstained from this. But there was a new development in this. Australia broke ranks with the US, Israel on this UN vote. For the first time, so Australia has split with the United States and Israel, voting in favor on a draft United Nations resolution which recognized the permanent sovereignty of Palestinian people in occupied territories like the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So I don't know how much important in this and what relevance will this have over the discourse of the discussion between the allies of the United States when it comes to Palestine and the Golan Heights, but it's a welcomed step, let's say. And Germany voted in favor. Germany voted in favor, finally. Something good is coming from this government. Guys, we spoke about, if you remember at the beginning of this stream, about the report of the UN and how Israel basically deliberately targeted journalists, and also the social media platforms have suppressed the pro-Palestinian content, unlike what they do with the Israelis, and they just let them say whatever they want. And I told you that there is an anti-Semitism now law in Germany that it's very I would say nowadays it's more than threatening, to be honest. They're intimidating us, basically, not to criticize Israel's war. It's not a war, but military conduct, let's say, in Gaza. And they could interpret anything we say as anti-Semitism, and this is going to have legal repercussions, and they could you could lose your resident permit, you could lose your passport, you could, if you have German passport, and you could be fined, you could end up in jail. There are so many things. But this is not going to be exclusive to Germany. United States under Donald Trump, guys, could also have a similar speech laws. And please remember that most of the people who supported Donald Trump say that they are free speech absolutists, and they respect the First Amendment, and they want for the Americans to have free speech regardless of the speech, and they don't want to intimidate people, and they don't want to suppress voices. But Donald Trump has something else to say about this. Let's first see what he has to say.
And defend our Jewish citizens in America. My first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support. Okay. Truth is, you don't have to do much after that. When you do that, it's going to work miracles. Please sit down. We will not subsidize the creation of terrorist sympathizers, and we're not going to do it certainly on American soil. We're not going to do it anywhere. Next, I will inform every educational institution in our land that if they permit violence, harassment, or threats against Jewish students, the schools will be held accountable for violations of the civil rights law. Very important. Jewish Americans must have equal protection under the law. They're going to get it. At the same time, my administration will move swiftly to restore safety for Jewish students and Jewish people on American streets.
So there's going to be a law that these universities and campuses could lose accreditation if anti-Israeli protests are organized under the allegation and claim that for the safety of the Jewish people. And we've seen with first-hand evidence that many Jewish students participated in these protests in the campuses. And some of the Zionists came to try to cause clashes, and they were wearing some intimidating, let's say, T-shirts. Nobody cared if they are Jewish, if they are not Jewish. Nobody cared. The only thing that people cared if you are pro-genocide or anti-genocide. Nobody cares about your religion, basically. But all these conservatives in the US who have been claiming that facts do not care about your emotions, Ben Shapiro, like talking heads, the ananas heads in the US, they keep talking about this. Emotions, facts do not care about your emotions, and we want free speech and free this type of spaces that the left wants to create, safe zones, safe spaces for the LGBTQ plus community. It's ridiculous. Why would there be special spaces for safety in the campuses or in any public squares? We don't want this type of special treatment for any community. Now, they're the ones who want to create safe spaces. Like, seriously, sometimes I feel like both sides are playing with the people, you know. And under false allegation, I mean, if there is serious threat against the Jewish people for being Jew, that would be a legitimate action to protect any community from physical violence or intimidation or harassment. But when there is none, and you know that there is none, this is a political persecution against the people who reject the U.S. foreign policy and reject the Israeli war crimes in Gaza Strip, right? This is really upsetting. Our friend Patrick, he shared this video and he said, this will backfire Trump so badly. And here is why. Donald Trump said, my first week back in the Oval Office, my administration will inform every college president that if you do not end anti-Semitic propaganda, they will lose their accreditation and federal taxpayer support. I shouldn't be the first one to point out the obvious, but firstly, using the federal government to enforce a completely fake definition of anti-Semitism to close down higher education institutions, deny access to education based on political beliefs, is against the First Amendment of the US Constitution. If I have to point this out, then you need to reread it as soon as possible. Secondly, criticism of Israeli actions, Zionist ideology, or Israel's genocide in Palestine or mass murder of Lebanese people is not anti-Semitic. And no Supreme Court justice will back Trump and media fanciful version of reality here clearly being imposed by Israeli lobby. Supporting Palestinian human rights, the right to life, liberty, and end to a brutal apartheid is not anti-Semitic, nor is it pro-Hamas or pro-terrorism. It's time we dispensed with this lie before it's eventually obliterated by a US High Court judgment anyway. Even your most conservative justice, Clarence Thomas, will send this farce into jury's oblivion where it belongs. By allowing a foreign lobby to enact unconstitutional dare we say, un-American, disingenuous authoritarian moves like this, the president is empowering a very intelligent and highly motivated nonpartisan opposition at home and abroad. It's a losing gambit all around. Trump then added, we will not subsidize the creation of terrorist sympathizers, and we're certainly not going to do it on American soil. Next, I will inform every educational institution in our land that if they permit violence, harassment, or threats against Jewish students, the schools will be held accountable for violations of the civil rights law. Utterly ridiculous. and embarrassing. Understand your office does itself no favors by allowing the Israel lobby to write these over-the-top, ill-advised speeches. This kind of half-baked reactionary politics will ultimately hurt you, your movement, and the country for that matters. It's not even good for Israelis and Jews in America. It will create more animosity and fuel more of what you call anti-Semitism. You're directly fueling a vicious cycle. There is no upside. It's 100% in the liability column. You will lose bigly, and the lobby couldn't care less. If you do, they can always buy another. I mean, I agree with Patrick that there is this type of laws only creates more, let's say, negative sentiments, and probably some people cannot really differentiate between the Israel lobby and the Jewish people in the United States, and they would have some negative sentiments toward the Jewish people as a whole. But to be honest with you, I also do feel, and this is just a speculation, but it's based on certain patterns that I've seen in the past, that the Zionist lobby and the Israeli government, they like to see anti-Semitism. And they like to see the spread of anti-Semitism, and they like to see any sort of violence against Jewish people or harassment against Jewish people. They like to see this type of acts to play the victim. To play the victim and to justify their deranged war methods in the Gaza Strip under self-defense justification. And they want to just sell also themselves to their people, the Jewish people, like, look, we're under existential threat. And this is happening all over the world. Look what happened in Amsterdam. They made it look like it's a pogrom, right? You remember it. And now what happened in the campuses, they tried to sell it as if it was an anti-Semitic movement. So they're trying to normalize this among the Jewish people all around the world, because once you push the people into fear, they start acting on their emotions, and they start acting under the manner that, let's say, the expectation that you might be killed for being a Jew. So you would agree with your protector, right, which is Israel. So this could be also a psychological operation by the Israeli side, to be honest with you. I had so many other things to tell you, one of which is Elon Musk apparently met with the Iranian ambassador in the UN, which is, in my opinion, a positive thing. I think that Elon Musk is... I'm not sure if this is only about diplomacy or trying to de-escalate in the region. And I don't know what's the role of Elon Musk anyways, because he's not going to be Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State. And I don't know how much influence he's going to have over Trump. But if the meeting is about de-escalation in the region, I think that would be welcomed. Otherwise, Iranians have to be careful with the Trojan horse. This is the only thing I could say about this case. Now, finally, I just want to move a little bit to another region, Ukraine, a very, very important, basically. Kaja Kallas, who is going to become the next, the chief diplomat of the EU, she gave a press conference the other day. So she says, victory of Ukraine is priority for us all. The situation on the battlefield is difficult, and that's why we must keep working every day and for as long as it takes, with as much military, financial, and humanitarian help as needed. Take a look.
For us all, the situation on the battlefield is very difficult. And that is why we must keep on working every day, today, tomorrow, and for as long as it takes, and with as much military, financial, and humanitarian aid as needed. This must be underpinned by a clear path for Ukraine to join the European Union. What we fight here is the European security and the European principles. Victory of Ukraine.
So the victory is priority. First of all, they don't define what is victory. Secondly, as long as it takes. This is the same speech that we have seen for now 2 years, almost 3 years, and we also saw the consequences and the results of it, and to what mayhem it has led for the Ukrainians and the killing of hundreds and thousands of them. So not changing course means insanity, in my opinion. It's like Einstein said, repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting different results is insanity. So I think the European Union is just headed to more expenditure over the military and defense budgets. And I think there is a certain political class in Europe which is taking over the higher positions, senior positions, such as Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas and Baerbock. I think this political class, the new political class that spawned in Europe recently, they're the ones who are going to lead the increased military expenditure. They have tried under different slogans and different justifications, climate change, taxing carbon and green energy and this and that, and they couldn't. And now it's going to be under the Corona times, remember? All sorts of fear mongering against the people didn't work well to increase the government expenditure. And now this is going to be under the fallacy and under the justification that Russia is going to invade entire Europe, so we have to increase our defense expenditure and to defend Ukraine as long as it takes. As long as Ukrainians are dying, Estonians are not dying, you Germans are not dying, French are not dying, Polish are not dying. It's Ukrainians dying, right? They're the cannon foders in this, so it's fine. Kaja Kallas is not only determined to defeat Russia and for the victory of Ukraine, she also says that the Iranian support for Russia is unacceptable. So she's calling for a change of approach against Iran. She says, because when I look at them, I find myself asking, what are we still waiting for? I don't know what type of approach she wants to pursue against Iran, but she also wants for China to face a higher cost for supporting Russia. This is what she said. And she says that that the response to authoritarian states supporting Russia means that the EU needed to signal to China that its aid to Moscow had consequences and a higher cost, but she didn't offer any specifics how she's going to do that. It reminded me of this type of talk when she allocated, basically, when she was the Prime Minister of Estonia, 0.25% of the GDP of Estonia to Ukraine. So for the next 4 years, Estonia will continue to provide military assistance to Ukraine in the amount of 0.25% of its GDP. But then when she was asked about money for her own people, Kaja Kallas said, the Minister of Education asks me for 50 million, but I don't have it. And this is similar to in Germany. In Germany, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Annalena Baerbock, she said that, I don't want to misquote her, but they took the budget for supporting Ukraine from other ministries, like, for example, the money allocated for the infrastructure or for the trains, for example, in Germany, it has been taken from them and sent to Ukraine. So basically, I mean, now I don't know if you're in Germany or not, but if you go to any train in S-Bahn or U-Bahn, the street trains or the underground trains, if you sit in them, they are dirty as fuck, man. Stinking. Homeless people everywhere. And drug scene is everywhere. People are selling drugs in the streets, homelessness. If you go to a train station, every moment they're telling you from the loudspeakers that be careful, they have big pockets. Why don't you solve this? Why are you taking the taxpayer money from the people if you can't provide them with clean transportation and clean streets? And there is lawlessness, there's drugs in the streets. You have homeless people everywhere, sleeping everywhere, basically, increasing. I'm not against homeless people. I'm not calling them danger, right? But Why would there be homeless people everywhere, sleeping in the train stations, in the streets, in this cold weather? There is money should be spent here in the country, right? Maybe I'm becoming nationalist now. They call this type of talk a nationalist talk in Germany. And they want to basically punish China for supporting Russia. But China is basically spending most of its money on innovation and on its own people and creating things instead of destroying things. And this is a car that I saw today on X, which was mind-boggling, to be honest. And it costs like $250,000, according to my research. I don't know. But this is something else, man. Like, this is an electric car, which I don't like electric cars. If there is a fuel version of it, and if I had the money, I would, okay. But anyways, this car is something else. It's different even from Musk's cars. Take a look. If I had the money, and I would, but the fuel version, of course. I mean, this type of helicopters could, I mean, some people think it could be chaotic, but with the proper GPS systems and with the proper technology, I think it's avoidable. Just like when people first invented cars, it was chaotic, and then people find their way. So let's see how this thing will develop. I just want to thank Memovox. Thank you so much, my friend, for your generous support. I really appreciate it. So guys, this is the end of the week. Today is Friday, and I'm going to take a rest for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, like usual. And we're going to see each other on Monday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Before leaving this live streaming, I wish you a great weekend, and I wish you peace upon you and upon your families. If you're liking my podcast, I would really appreciate it if you subscribe and hit the like button. And if you can and you would like to support my independent work, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you soon. Salam.